Welcome to Solo, the podcast that aims to shine a light on what it takes to be a solo creative. I'm your host, Nick Hill. How's it going, guys? Yeah, new adventure here. We're doing a podcast. Why? Why is he doing a podcast? Well, I love podcasts, and it's an opportunity to do deep dives and to get a little bit more of an explanation on various topics. This podcast is going to focus on what it takes to be a solo creative or a one-man band when it comes to being a YouTuber, being a musician, being a streamer. There are many situations where one person is wearing many hats. So that's what this podcast is basically going to focus on. It's going to be my journey doing this crazy YouTube musician guitar player thing and sharing with you the struggles, the opportunities, and the wins. And hopefully you guys can learn something from it. And it's just another reason for me to talk too. Who am I kidding? So, like I said, we're going to talk about everything that a solo creative goes through. I touched upon this already, the wearing of many different hats. I am a guitar player and a musician. That's how this whole crazy thing started. I've been playing guitar since I was 18. I am now 39. You can do the math. Long time. I should be way better, but that's a whole nother podcast. And getting into recording and mixing like that went along with sort of being a guitar player. And let's just kind of, I guess, start right there. Started playing when I was 18. As I was learning, 98, 99, it was the very early stages of recording on computers. And I remember in the year 2001, when my first son was born, my best friend Ken had just built a computer, and we got this fancy sound card where we could have inputs. And we took a shitty Korg pedal, plugged my guitar in, plugged that into the Sound Blaster external sound card thing, and we were off and running. We were using one of the earliest DAWs that, man, I can hardly remember the name. I think it ended up being called Digital Orchestrator Pro. It was something before that, but basically, recording on a computer was in its infancy. And that, in turn, started my journey with recording guitars, starting to learn the process of mixing, being a sound engineer, and producing. And that is another set of hats that, again, we're going to use me as an example. So, guitar player and musician. Then you start learning about production and being a producer, being a sound engineer, being a mastering engineer. Of course, I'm using some of these terms very loosely because I would not consider myself a mastering engineer, but I master my own music because, hey, it's affordable. I'm not saying that it's the preferred method, but I think I get good enough results to basically fool most of you. And then as the years went on, I played in bands, got better and better at producing, mixing, being a sound engineer, learning a DAW, learning techniques for recording, you know, quad tracking and double tracking and layering and EQ and what sounds right, and working with guitar tones and getting better at guitar playing and composition, writing good songs, writing catchy riffs. Like, it takes practice. You got to put in the reps. As time progressed, YouTube started becoming more prevalent. And I got into the YouTube game very, very, very late, clearly. We've been kind of rocking hard for about 2 years now. The last year has been my most productive year, my most successful year when it comes to YouTube. But I'd say about 2 years ago, I finally decided I'm gonna put some real effort into it. Of course, that was around all my being a dad, being a husband, and having full-time jobs. In most cases, more than one job. So, it definitely took a lot of sacrifice, but we're getting off topic a little bit. Guitar player, musician, then I'm a producer, sound engineer, mastering engineer, loosely. Then you're becoming a videographer. Videographer. A videographer and a video editor. That's basically how I got into it, which is now my job. I'm a video editor and a videographer and a producer for a company. But it all started my desire and passion for video and story and editing basically started as an extension of my music. First and foremost, it was I wanted to be a guitar player. I want to write music. And at some point, I'd like people to hear my music. I played in bands. I played live and started recording all the while I was recording myself. You know, honing those skills, honing the production, honing the engineering, and then now getting into the video side of things. So you're learning that. You're learning camera angles, lighting, composition, story. You're trying to tell a story through these videos. Many people might not realize that, but you have to keep your viewer, your listener, intrigued and entertained. And for a lot of people, well, I mean, the narrative is kind of told that we have short attention spans. So there's this feeling you need to keep people moving. So that's how composition and story comes into play. After that, you got to think like, well, I'm going to need photos and I'm going to need a YouTube banner and a Facebook banner and a MySpace header. Just kidding. Nobody uses MySpace anymore. I think it's still a thing. Anyway, so you got to I started doing my own graphic design and I started taking photos of myself, as cringy as it was and painful. Started doing more and more photography, started doing my own graphic design, started coming up with an overall theme to what it is I was doing. So far, we're a guitar player, we're a musician, we're a producer, sound engineer, and mastering engineer. Now we're a videographer and a video editor. Now we're diving into graphic design. And I've been lucky enough on this journey to meet some amazing people. So I have received help. Now, that's also something that goes along with this. You're doing it alone, but you're also not doing it alone. There's a community of people who are sort of doing the same thing. Musicians or creatives or whatever avenue they're taking. They have an interest, they're sharing that interest, and they're doing all the work to put that interest out into the world. I've been lucky enough to meet some amazing people along this journey. John from Sonic Drive Studios, who I've become good friends with over the years. We chat almost every day. Scott, aka The Bun from Baritone Obsessed, who once I stumbled upon his channel, I wanted to reach that bar. He set the bar super high for his production, his storytelling in his videos, his guitar playing and his guitar riffs, everything. And we've become very, very good friends. And it's been a blessing. Scott, or The Bun, has helped me with a lot of my cover art and sort of teaching me about design because he's a graphic designer. So I have had help along the way with that, but I do most of it. Scott's made all but one of my solo single releases. So he has done the cover for my EP and all the singles aside from one. Narcissism, I did. And then the covers for my other project, The Partisan Component with my buddy Jeff, I did those covers. But Scott is an amazing, talented guy, so I refer to him and I'll ask him for advice. And that kind of brings me to the next thing. We talk about this all the time. We bounce ideas off each other. So it's nice to have that kind of built-in community. But ultimately, Scott does all of his stuff with the help of some friends, taking on various graphical things or production things or whatever. And then I have my own thing. So we're basically driving the car. Marketing. You have to basically market yourself. You have to be your own brand ambassador, And this is all like crazy stuff that feels silly and feels funny and at times is hard to do because it feels very narcissistic. And I guess it is. But if your goal is to get out there and be heard, have your music heard, and have your videos seen, that will ultimately lead to people listening to your music, you have to market yourself. So you have to learn about marketing. And also social media goes along with that. So basically you have to be a social media marketer and a brand ambassador for yourself. You're basically creating a brand yourself, myself. People like me, I guess, for, you know, my sense of humor, pretty chill, straightforward. These are things people have said. I'm not just talking about myself. Um, Kind of easy to listen to. I have a good way of explaining things. I do try and go out of my way to explain things in a certain way so that most people can understand. So hats, many different hats. So what do I mean? Guitar player, musician, producer, sound engineer, mastering engineer, videographer and video editor, graphic designer, marketing and social media. So that's a lot to handle on one's own. And it can get overwhelming. So that kind of brings me to some of the struggles that we're going to kind of dive into, and it'll be different themes. Some podcasts will be about the struggles. Some podcasts are going to be about some of the successes and some of the wins. And I'm going to take you along this journey. So if we're touching on some of the struggles that kind of sometimes happen every day, sometimes don't. Creativity and writing music. Obviously, writing music is at the center of all this. So I have to have music and I have to be writing so I have to be practicing and playing. That's another thing. So the creation and writing of music, the keeping up with my craft of playing guitar in order to do so, that can be a struggle because we're not always inspired. Being a small channel has its own set of difficulties because, you know, I love all my followers. I'd say 99% of everybody's super positive, very chill, very cool. But all of that 99% want more. You know, I get requests to review this thing or explain this thing or how do you do this thing or what combination of this or what should I do with this? And a lot of the time, I get questions about certain gear that I just can't get my hands on. Boohoo, I know. But that is part of being a smaller channel is like you don't have access to everything that everybody wants to see, which is, I guess, a good problem to have. People are stumbling upon my channel who are watching guys who may have access to this stuff. And I know if I keep putting in the work, at some point we'll get there. But that can be a struggle. Time management. We listed off all of those hats we have to wear. All that stuff takes time just to create, but you also have to keep up on the learnings of all of that. I still run through guitar exercises. I'm always watching videos, tutorials, creative live classes, and master classes on producing and sound engineering and mixing and mastering. Videography and video editing is a whole nother thing. There's so many different techniques and things you can learn. I mean, just learning your video editing software at the very beginning can be overwhelming and a task within itself. And people go to school for it. So all of these things, learning them getting competent with them, getting, to the point where you feel comfortable enough to put what you're doing with that out. It all takes time. It all takes study. It all takes effort. So time management is a bitch. Not to mention time management with my full-time job, with my kids, my family. And of course, you don't want to burn out. So you need to take time for yourself. So time, there's never enough time. And you always have to be thinking about, you know, are you making the best of your time? Now, for me, luckily enough, I get a lot of enjoyment out of learning. And I get a lot of enjoyment on, you know, doing what it takes to get good at this stuff, nerding out, learning, practicing, creating. So, in a sense, and learning and being creative is also something I like to do. So, win-win. I guess that's a good thing for me. And of course, there are also successes. It's not all bad. It's not all gloom and doom. First and foremost, music. Putting my music out into the world and people hearing it, and then finding out people like it. I still get blown away at that. Um, when I check my Spotify, no, I'll bring it up. I'm trying to not say, and it's difficult. I edit a lot of interviews. I've edited a lot of videos, and the amount of times I have to take stammering and ums out of a video is overwhelming. So let's pull up some data here. First of all, and this is going to seem very minuscule and low, but for me, everything is in perspective. Everything is like the fact that I always try to look at it this way. This is in no way a brag, but I'm just kind of trying to explain my thought process with everything. Because it's safe to say most of you guys who listen to this are followers of my YouTube channel. I have 5.28 thousand subscribers, 5.28K. So that's 5.25 thousand, 525, no, 5,250 or 5,280. Math. Just over 5,000 people. Imagine 5,000 people standing in front of me. That would be amazing. So I don't take that for granted. It's amazing to me. Same thing. I have 54 listeners on my Spotify, on all my music in the last 28 days. That doesn't seem like a lot, but if I had a room full of 54 people listening to my music who wanted to be listening to my music, I'd be blown away. So I take that in consideration. I mean, I have people in Germany, Canada, Finland, the UK, Norway. I have people in Portugal. There was somebody from Spain in my last live stream, Argentina, Brazil. People all over the world listen to my music and they like it. And I feel proud and humbled that I find myself in a position to even do that. Like, we live in an interesting time, disregarding everything that's going on in the world. We live in such an interesting time where anybody can be creative, put out music, and grow a following. So, in my eyes, that's a success. The fact that I have 5,280 people following me on YouTube and many, many people around the world listening to my music, it's crazy. That's a success in my eyes. That's a win. To go along with that, like I just said, these numbers seem small. They are small, but something I've enjoyed is building a grassroots fan base, building it from the bottom. Not a huge fan of social media, but I recognize it as part of this journey, as part of selling my brand, engaging with those 5,280 people and all the people who listen to me on iTunes and Spotify. It's a means to engage, and I'll spend time engaging with those people. I have maybe 610 followers on Instagram, which is nothing. But I bet I've interacted with all of those people because I will interact, I'll comment on photos and hashtags that I find interesting that relate to me, and I create an interaction. So I've built that by hand, basically, one by one. And that's cool. Again, imagine 600 people hanging out, listening to me, watching me play music or whatever. That's amazing to me. The biggest thing that I really have grown to love, and that is helping people and educating people on some of these topics, music related, that again, most of you guys are following me for. I love helping people. I know in the early days, it was like information was hard to get, even in the early days of the internet, you know? Basically, now you can go on and learn how to do anything, and almost everybody's been gone through it. So it's easy to find information, but it can be difficult trying to coordinate and, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, sift through all of it. And I love being able to share what I've learned about, you know, production, mixing, recording, and production techniques. I feel like I know a thing or two. By no ways a professional expert, but I think I get good results with my music. Again, I'm always improving. There are some things I listen to and I'm like, should have done that differently. Could have done it better. But if I can share my mixing, my recording and production techniques, and it helps other people be creative, that's a win for me. You know, if I can do videos on the Helix, like I do a ton of videos on the Helix. Some people joke and call me the Helix guy. I'm in no way the Helix guy. There are people who do way more videos on the Helix and go into way more detail. I guess if we're talking metal and Helix, sure, I'll take the crown, whatever. But the Helix I'm using as an example here, you know, I've learned this thing over the course of having it the last couple of years and been able to share what I've learned, my techniques for tone creation, how I use it, you know, different findings, and share that with the followers. And that basically just helps them kind of jump ahead and be able to be more creative faster. And I know if I can sit down, get my gear sounding to where it's inspiring me, I can jam out some stuff and record riffs. That's that's what I love, man. That's what I want to spend my time doing, making music, recording cool riffs, putting songs together, putting it out into the world. So if me teaching on gear, if me reviewing pieces of gear, if me making instructional videos can help other people to do that, then shit. That's amazing to me. I love it. I genuinely love helping everybody. And I always get excited when people reach out and say, like, thank you so much because of you, this. Thank you so much. My band is using this. Thank you so much. You know, it's awesome. And because of that, I've met amazing people, talented people, much more talented people than me. But anyway, basically, that's what this podcast is going to be about. We're going to talk about everything: graphic design, all of those hats, guitar playing, musicianship, you know, song creation, production, techniques, you know, video, videography, graphic design, marketing, all the struggles and all the wins and successes that go along with it. I want to bring you guys along and hopefully you guys can learn. So that's going to be it for this one. I'm really looking forward to this. It's another way to kind of push me. I like to have my hands in a lot of different pots. Is that the term? I don't remember. Anyhow, I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to interacting with you guys. I'm looking forward to sharing, you know, my knowledge with you in a little more in-depth kind of a way. And I'm excited, man. I'm excited. So thank you guys so much for being here. I really, really appreciate you. Special shout out to all of you who are supporting me on Patreon and as members on YouTube. You guys are the ones helping to pay for stuff like podcast hosting and saving up so that I can acquire more gear. So if you're interested in helping me and the channel and what I do, you know, I'm over on Patreon. If it's easier for you, become a member over on YouTube. I am doing monthly Helix patches for the top tier supporters on both of those platforms. Basically, the platforms are identical. And I do behind the scenes, monthly Helix patches, early access to videos, and anything else I can kind of share with you guys. So I'm doing that. If you don't want to do that, there's other ways. I have music for sale on Bandcamp and streaming everywhere. Music is streamed. So, take that information and do with it what you will. But thank you. Thanks all of you, first of all, for being here. Thanks to all of my subscribers. And a special thanks to you, those of you on Patreon and members of the channel. So that's going to be it for this one, guys. We'll see you in the next one. I appreciate you. Take it easy.